If you like to sell in property and you don't know which strategies to choose, in this video we'll break down different strategies, and at the end of this video we'll be able to decide which strategy is the right strategy for you. This is a question I get quite a lot. Which strategy should I choose? Which strategy is the right strategy for me? This strategy we're going to be talking about a strategy that doesn't require you a lot of money to start with. I'm going to go through the ins and outs of the strategy. I'm going to be talking about the good things, the bad things, and also the unknown things that most people only will know if they do this strategy for a long period of time. As you know, there are many different strategies in property, and most people don't know which one is the right for them and which one is the right vehicle for them, for their circumstance, to achieve their goal. You don't want it to choose the wrong strategy and then lose a lot of time and pick a strategy that you don't resonate with. So here are some aspects we're going to take in consideration. We're going to be seeing how much money you need to start with when you pick that strategy. We're also going to talk about how much time do we need. Can we do part-time? Do we need to do full-time? Also, we're going to talk about how much money you need to be compliant. Some strategies you need to be compliant, and some of these strategies have a very heavy compliance. Some of them are not as heavy. So we wanted to know how much money you need in order to be compliant. Also, we wanted to know how fast can we make the money. Some strategy takes longer, other strategy is much faster. And also I'm going to show you the unknown about each strategy. Normally you only know if you do this strategy for a long period of time. And the last thing we're going to talk about is what is one positive thing about this strategy that you might all know. I'm going to cover that as well. So what are the strategies we're going to be covering? So we're going to be covering sourcing, we're going to be covering rent, we're going to be covering rent to SA, and also we're going to be covering fix and flip. Then I will show how can you pick the right strategy for you. So let's start with sourcing. So what is sourcing? Sourcing is when you're going to find a property sometimes at a discount, or sometimes a property that's going to be a good deal for your investor. You need to have an investor first, you need to understand the investor needs, and you're going to find a property for that investor. And then what you're going to do, you're going to package that deal for a fee. I'm going to give an example so it makes sense. So let's say you have a deal that the true value of the property is 200,000, and let's say you negotiate this property for 162K, for example. You will be packaged that deal and you're going to give to that investor. So normally this investor can pay you 5K to 6K and sometimes even 10K or even more. But that is kind of what is sourcing. Now remember, this is something that I see quite a lot, particularly in the beginners, is sometimes the property doesn't need to be in a discount. So meaning people are looking only property for a discount. Sometimes it doesn't need to be a discount. You just need to find a good deal for this investor. That good deal, it doesn't even need to be a discount. It can be a deal that the investor can add value. I see a lot of people just get stuck sometimes because they are looking for really discount properties to source to investors. Sometimes you don't have to do that. Now, very important, there are all sorts of sourcing. There are sourcing that you can do, for example, normal house. There are sourcing that can you do rents. There are sourcing that you can do rent SA, and also you can sometimes source property for social housing. So there are different type of sourcing. You just need to choose the right for you. So next is rent. How does it work? You're going to find a property and you're going to be guaranteed this landlord a rent, and you're going to take this property and then you're going to manage this property for the landlord. Sometimes landlord is renting, let's say, the entire house, and what you're going to do, you're going to take this property and you're going to rent room by room, and you're going to keep the difference. You have to pay the bills, you have to collect the rent, and also in the end of the month you need to pay the landlord the rent that you agree. Let me give an example so it becomes simpler for you to understand. So let's say you have a landlord who have a house and you agree, for example, for a landlord to pay 1,200 per month. Now, let's say this house is a 6-bed. What you're going to do, you're going to take this house and you're going to be renting the house room by room. So let's say you're going to be renting the room for 500 per room, and in total rent, in the end of the month, you're going to get, let's say, 3K. Now what you're going to do, you're going to give the landlord 1,200. You're going to pay the bills. Let's say the bills is 800, and then the rest, let's say £1,000, is going to be for you. That's the way rent works. As the same as sourcing, you're going to have a different type of rents. You're going to have rent for HMO, and also you're going to have rent for social housing, where you can give the house, instead of you manage the house, you're going to give to the social housing. Social housing will manage the rent. So then the next strategy is rent SA. Rent SA is another rent strategy. Instead of you have tenants looking for tenants, what you're going to do, you're going to pick this property, you're going to put in Airbnb or book.com for short-term rent. Now, let me give you an example. So let's say you find a house that you're going to be renting from the landlord for 1,300. You're going to guarantee the landlord rent, and you're going to put this property on the market, for example, for 1,500 per night. The objective here is to pay the landlord, pay the cleaners, pay the bills, and profit the difference. There are a lot of people making a very good income by using this strategy. So the next strategy we're going to be talking is fix and flip. This strategy works like this. You're going to buy a house, you're going to do construction, and then you're going to put this property back on the market to sell. For example, let's say you buy a house for 250 grand and you have to spend, let's say, 100K in refurbishment, and now you're going to put this property back on the market to sell, for example, for 400,000. Let's say your profit is going to be 50K. Of course, you're going to be paying tax on that 50K. I just want you to understand this is kind of the strategy, overall strategy. So you understand, it's picking a property, doing construction, put back on the market, and you're going to have a profit, and you need to pay tax on the profit. So now you know a bit about the strategies. What we're going to do now next, we're going to know what are the ins and outs of your strategy, how much money you need to have in order to start, how much time you need, and how much money you need to be compliant. So the first one we're going to start with is going to be sourcing. So how much money you need to start? You don't need a lot of money to start with in sourcing, but you will need the money to be compliant. Now, how much time do you need? You don't need a lot of time. You can start with part-time, and then as soon as you start making some money, start replacing your income, you can go full-time. Compliance. So how much money in compliance you will need? So in terms of compliance, for you to be compliant, fully compliant sourcing, you're going to spend around 1,000 to 2,000 pounds to be compliant. Next is how fast can you make money? So depending on which type of sourcing, you normally will take 1 to 3 months. If you source rent is going to be faster. If you're sourcing a normal house, it's going to be longer. So it depends on which sourcing you're going to do. As I said to you, there are different types of sourcing, but normally it takes 1 to 3 months. Now, what is the unknown factor? The unknown factor in sourcing that most people won't know, depending on the sourcing you're going to pick, there's something called cash gap. Cash gap is when you buy a property and then when the landlord or the investor will pay you. That time that takes is a cash gap. It can be sometimes 3 months, meaning you can source a deal, it takes you 3 months to get the money, but as I said to you, it depends. Now, what is one positive thing about sourcing? Great way to learn different type of strategies. It's a great way to get into property as well. So the next one is going to be rent. So how much money you need to start? So normally rent you need more money to start. We're talking about 5K to 15K, depends on how well you want to do the house. Time needed, you can start as a part-time. Compliance, you need less compliance. We're talking about 400 to 600. That's the money you need to be compliant. How fast can you make the money? Normally 1 to 2 months, you can start making some money, and the unknown factor is until you systemize the rent business, it can be quite demanding. And what is the one positive thing about rent is recurring. Monthly recurring. If in case you need the money to replace your income, this can be a good strategy because it's more recurring compared with sourcing that you always need to looking for source property in order to get money. The next one is going to be rent SA. How much money you need to start? Normally it's 10K to 25K, sometimes can be less, but if in case you are competing with a hotel, so you want the property to be looking good, so I would say depending on the area. How much time you need? You can start as a part-time. Compliance money, we talk about 400 to 600, the same thing. How fast can you make money? We talk about as well around 1 month to 2 months you can start generating money. The unknown factor is that rent SA can be seasonal. So it can be fluctuating. Sometimes you can make a lot of money, sometimes you can have a down period. So you need to understand that is the one thing that most people don't talk about. And a positive thing, it can be a very high profit margin type of strategy. That is rent SA. The next one is going to be fix and flip. How much money you need? Normally you will need a bit more money because you need to buy a property. Let's say you will need around 50 grand to have as a deposit. You can do this as a part-time. Compliance, you don't have a lot of compliance. Let's say you might need around 400 to open a company if in case you're doing flips in the company. How fast can you make money? We're talking about 4 months to 12 months because it depends on what type of construction you're going to do. Now, the unknown factor in this strategy will be you need system for construction. A lot of people do flip and they don't know they need systems, and they get sometimes into trouble because they don't know they need system. They get bad contractors and can be sometimes a nightmare. But you just need to make sure that you need system. Now, the positive thing about this strategy, you can have a lump sum of money. So now that you know the ins and outs of each strategy, you need to decide which strategy you're going to pick. How do you know what strategy is the right strategy for you? So to help us understand and pick the right strategy, what you need to do, you need to think about how much time do you have available. Also, you need to think about how much money do you have. Then we need to think what is your long-term goal, and also what is your circumstance. And the last question you need to think is, do you need the money to be recurring, or you can wait for a lump sum? By the way, if in case you still not know, okay, which strategy you should choose, what you could do, I will put a link below. You can schedule a call with my team and they can help you to pick the strategy. But if you ask these 4 questions, I ask you how much time, how fast you want the money. If you answer these questions, you will be able to pick the right strategy for you. Remember, there's no right or wrong answer. All the strategy works. You just need to pick the right strategy for your needs. I hope this video will help you to decide which strategy you start with, and I hope you find value in this video. I will see you in the next one. Bye for now and see you soon. Bye now.